So, how about that drive in?
I guess that's why they call it Sin City.
I just was playing because I love the game. Like, and it's scary to me.
It's really easy for the game to become a job.
Glow sticks in his hands, whistle in his mouth.
Man, kids out there playing the game, staying out of trouble, competing. I love it. God, we're just going to wear these hangover references out.
Yeah.
All right. So let's just go ahead and get the elephant out of the room first.
Yeah, how about this weekend's football?
Yeah, arguably the greatest weekend of football ever in the history of any level.
All walk-offs.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
First time in NFL playoff history that the divisional round has been every game was decided by a field goal.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Not surprised.
I bet your boy Phil Dawson loved that.
Loved it. Deja vu.
My man was tweeting hard about it. I think I saw I think the first one I saw was reason number 3, still think kickers don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think he was the kicker last time they played the Packers and beat them. Like when they kicked a field goal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
I don't know what the year was, but like 2014 or something like that.
Oh, for real?
I mean, yeah, he kicked in the league for
ever
52 years or something like that.
Literally forever.
Yeah.
But without diving like too deep into anything, what was like the game that stuck out to you?
Well, so quarterback bias, obviously, Chiefs, Bills.
For those of you watching at home, that's what we call a leading question.
Yeah, right. The quarterback play was almost perfect. And I saw that one stat where it was like Patrick Mahomes drove down the field, scored a touchdown in the exact same amount of time that it took Dak to do the quarterback draw.
It was the field goal drive, the 13-second.
Yeah.
So
field goal drive.
They got into field goal range and kicked a field goal in 13 seconds, and Dak's quarterback draw for a first down took 14.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Golly. Even bracketing Tyreek, still got quick slant, and he's so fast. And then he like chunks the deuces up to the guy that's in front of him.
I saw that. Like somebody put something there like, if you're throwing the peace sign up to a guy in front of you, you're a psychopath.
Yeah, you're fast.
That's uncanny.
Yeah, but for me, it comes back to the conversation of overtime. In the NFL, it sucks, right? Agree or disagree?
I mean, it does. It sucks less than it used to.
Yeah.
Where it was like, oh, it's sudden death and a field goal win it. Like
right.
It sucks less, but it's still not great. But the follow up, because everybody's like, why don't they just do like college? I think the follow up to that is, something we didn't really talk about was what's your feeling towards the new college overtime, which was I think it's starting in the third overtime. Mm-hmm. It's 2-point plays only.
Yeah.
Not like you score, you got to go for 2. Like
right.
It's you just line up for a 2-point conversion.
It definitely makes the game a little bit more artistic when you get to that point. Because, like for us, we had a coach here in Texas that experienced that like week 2 and was very honest and was like, guys, we had like literally had to start drawing it up on the sideline because they went into like 5 or 6 overtimes.
Which game was it?
It was Berkner and somebody else.
Oh, okay, okay.
But he was like, I mean, we practiced 1 or 2 of them, but you just don't really plan for that. And with the new rule, like you got to have, at least more than 1 or 2 in your pocket.
Yeah, that was definitely something that like I didn't prepare for, because we do play by NCAA rules here. So if we ever got into that situation, that's what we're going to do.
Right.
And I was of like the thought process that, we didn't start worrying about like 2-point plays. Like we line up in gate.
Right.
And like, okay, spoiler alert, like I know Coach Elliott's not going to get mad because Salina's lined up in the exact same gate formation for like 40 years. But we run gate, but then like our 2-point specific plays, we really don't start to put an emphasis on it until week 3, week 4, week 5, right? You got plays that can get you a couple yards.
Right.
Shout out to Heath. You know what play I'm thinking. When you get into the red zone, things are condensed. You need to go make a play. But even when you start doing that, you're only looking at 2, 3, maybe 4.
Right.
And we always kind of looked at it as like last year, 2020, we used a couple of them in different situations, whether it was like a 4th and goal or going for 2. But once we use it, it's burned, right?
Sure.
It's not something like, because those are like, that's, how many DCs across the country have like, junk play period.
Right.
And they're all drawn to a T. So it's not really something that you look to like recycle. Maybe you throw a wrinkle off of, but so it kind of made me have to reflect on like, oh, I'm not near as prepared for this hypothetical as I should be.
Yeah. No, it's tough because from a conceptual standpoint, you also got to figure out, because to your point, you normally don't plan for that stuff until week 2 or 3 or 4. Why? Because you have so many other things to put in, and it kind of just gets lost in the sauce. But you have to figure out, like, do we want to create a new play? Do we want to, base off a play we already have and make some tweaks to it? It's kind of tough.
For sure. But, and that's, I saw Colin Coward, who loves to be different for different sake.
Yeah.
And he was like, stop complaining about the overtime rules, get one stop of the many opportunities you had. And I think it's hard. I found myself last night being like, well, that's bad defense.
Yeah, for sure.
And there were a couple plays on each side of the ball. Like, I think Mahomes even said in a postgame interview, he on the Tyreek Hill long touchdown in regulation, like with a minute left, he was like, I saw they were in 2-man, and like I knew that was just, it was over at that point, because nobody can run with Tyreek Hill down the field.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to give him an inside release.
Correct. Yeah.
But then even the Chiefs, who are their defense is supposed to be great. Now I understand they didn't have Tyrann Mathieu in the middle, but now it's 4th and 4. Yeah. Your edge guy blows up the tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he falls down, but like he's flushed the pocket. How you get pump fake from 6 yards away? I'm sorry. I know I'm not in the NFL. I can't attest to this. Capern's probably gonna get mad at me if he ever hears this, but like, you can't get people that get pump faked. It's just tough for me.
Yeah.
Like you especially 6 yards away, and he didn't even jump. He just lost his balance and had to slow down. And Josh Allen just jogs for a first down.
I'm with you. I know that when you're in the moment and you're a big guy and you're trying to go get a skinny guy, you just, I don't know, saliva starts coming out the mouth. Right. They just want to land on you. But yeah, in regards of overtime, I would say the other argument is if college football was the same as NFL, we wouldn't be having this argument.
Right.
So because there is more suspense, there's more suspense. It's more entertaining, at least to me, in college, because it's like, man, what'd they do? They score? Did they, kick for 3? Like, what'd they do? You know what I mean? And the other team gets that chance. It's a little bit more suspenseful compared to the NFL. It
gives you the punches and counter punches, right?
Correct.
Like, our defense went out there and held them to a field goal. So, like, we got to respond. And on the flip side, hey, our offense only got 3 points. Defense has got to really step up, right? Whereas, like, all we're stuck with from last night is the picture of Josh Allen, like, gaping eyes on the sideline because they scored and, like, oh, I didn't even get to touch the field in overtime. Sick.
Right. Like, I just played a perfect game and I still lost. So,
which, there still is a shot of an all Texas high school quarterback Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one left on each side.
No doubt.
We just got to see if Mahomes and Stafford can pull it off, which I would love to see Matt Stafford win one for, pride of HP.
Yeah.
Because
Highland Park.
If you're that productive that long in Detroit, like, you deserve something.
Yeah.
Like,
for
that's
sure.
a tough beat.
He's tough, dude.
Oh yeah.
He's so tough.
You remember the clip, like, obviously I got off on a tangent, but the clip where I don't know what year it was. It was early in his career, maybe like year 2, 3, or 4. Dante Culpepper's his backup. I think they were playing the Browns. It's a late game. They're down. He drives down, throws a touchdown, and gets smoked. Dislocates his shoulder.
Yeah,
he's like,
dude.
It's out. And but they end up calling a timeout. Culpepper was like warming up, about to go in because they got to go for 2.
Yeah.
Or they didn't have to go. They were going for 2.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, you call timeout. I can go back in. And the trainer's like trying to like put a sling on him and like brace him.
Yep.
And he's like, you call timeout. I can go back in. Goes in and like play fakes with one good arm.
Yep.
Throws it and like doesn't even celebrate. Just like almost
Jogs
falls down
off,
and just jogs out. He's like, don't touch me. Don't touch me.
Yes. I remember that.
That was like peak NFL Network, like early days.
Yeah.
And you could kind of see all that stuff, and they would just like randomly mic guys up, and you got to appreciate it.
It was awesome. And good for him, man. He deserves it. So he's very, very underrated.
There's on the flip side of that, like, dude, the Kansas City Chiefs, that offense is just absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say one thing back to Matt Stafford. I was listening to Aaron Rodgers on Pat McAfee, and this is maybe
tough week for him.
Yeah, really tough week. I think it was a year ago they're talking about Patrick Mahomes and the no look pass and all that type of stuff, and Aaron seems to be a really big fan of Stafford. And he was like, yeah, so there's been people in the league been doing that. The main guy plays for Detroit currently. Talking about Stafford, he's like, man, he's been doing the no look passes forever. So, I mean, he's awesome. But now that he's finally getting the credit, he's with a team that surrounded by talent finally. So
that's what's been crazy is that like really Stafford and Mahomes, their pass, like their early pass and college into the NFL, you really don't see a variation until you talk about like the franchise that they played for. Mm-hmm. Because Matt Stafford, stud baseball player, former teammate of Clayton Kershaw, right?
Ooh.
Goes to college, balls out early, right? High draft pick, and then super productive, puts up a ton of numbers.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest difference there is that, again, but it's connected to the franchise, is that he doesn't get the opportunity to like wait, grow, like Mahomes did behind Alex Smith. Right? He's just kind of thrown into the fire and finds a way to fight through the injuries and the adversity and really produces some pretty gaudy numbers for being in Detroit with what little he really had around him. Yeah,
Megatron.
But I think that's Megatron and 3 first-round draft pick receivers and no offensive line.
Yeah.
But
Keith Sweat. Nobody.
But then Mahomes, same thing. Stud baseball player. Mm-hmm. Drafted by like the Brewers, I think, out of high school.
Yeah.
Leaves college early after a super productive career.
Yep.
High draft pick, and then again, he just happens to go into a better situation where he can learn, grow. Andy Reid,
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's, do you go to a coach / system that's willing to adapt to you? Do they have the system, kind of what we talked about last week, that can adapt to that person?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, because I will say, I'm a big believer in the quarterback is the one that wins championships, not the defense. But I will say, I'm not wrong on that. But this weekend was a really big testament to be the rebuttal for that, a la Jimmy Garoppolo.
Right.
I mean, managed the game really well, played tough, but in comparison to the Bills or the Chiefs, quarterback play,
what
different.
Other guys are doing really diminishes what he did.
Correct.
And that game didn't really do a lot for special team coaches across the country.
Yeah, like
except make them mad.
Yeah, your special team sucks in general. And then, hey, you know what? Last play of the game, let's go ahead and just have 10 on the field.
Let's just not put that last guy out there. Why?
What are we doing?
Yeah, we don't want to block this.
Yeah.
So
mind blowing. So, I mean, just to kind of cap, I'm assuming your favorite game was the same, Bills.
Oh
Chiefs.
yeah,
Okay,
by far.
Yeah.
It just it was, but it wasn't. So here was my thing: is that like, the history of the Packers is great, but I hate it. It bothered me that like such an explosive offense had to be so hindered by weather.
Yeah, that's true.
Which when obviously you can't control the weather, but I would have loved to see like in a bubble in a stadium something where those two teams fit, because I think it would be a slightly different outcome. Now, Joe Burrow and the Bengals, that on the other hand, like I know it wasn't a high scoring affair by any means, but that was a dang good football team.
It was.
Or football game. And I do think that the nightcap was the most entertaining, and I obviously there's a lot of value in that. I saw my guy Ron Mackey, Coach Mackey, he tweeted, you don't see as many coaches active on Twitter during a 0-0 defensive slugfest.
Yeah, you see some O-line coaches during the Niners like get hyped up,
right? When they put Trent Williams at fullback and let him lead up. But just to touch on the Bengals game, there were Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase got some random criticism early when they were drafted by Cincinnati, Jamar Chase especially last summer. So it's funny to me to see talking heads. It's funny to me to see him be wrong, but it's even funnier to me to see him just completely pretend it didn't happen or to downplay it.
Oh, yeah.
When the fact of the matter is Jamar Chase is making a really strong case to be the best receiver in the NFL right now.
No doubt.
So, but yes, favorite game of the night was definitely Bills Chiefs, just because both of those guys are, I mean, we got at least 8 to 10 years left of seeing those two guys in pretty close to peak prime. Right. So it's just kind of a glimpse. If the franchises can keep a strong foundation around them, it's going to be, we're in a sweet spot of quarterback play with those two.
Yeah, and if you're a quarterback guy, some of those throws that were made were miraculous.
100%.
Yeah, so
impressive. All right. Slight pivot. Question. You're in year 8 high school coaching?
I think so, probably 7 or 8, yeah.
Okay. Do you think, I mean, I know the answer that I would give about you, but do you think that you're, like, how do you feel about, like, creating content for other coaches to, like, buy? Before I get deep into the trenches, what's your thought on that?
Just in general, like if I was to do that myself right now?
Yeah, just like a coach tube or anything like that. What's your personal thought on, like, you?
I mean, if I was to do it, I mean, the way that I view it, I mean, I think it's a good thing. I think it challenges you as the person that's writing it, to know your content, to own your content, probably even do a little more self-study. It's going to make you better regardless, if you're open-minded to it. That being said, there's a lot of things that, I look back on 5 years ago where it's like, man, I thought I knew a lot. And I didn't know anything.
That's the perfect segue to the second half of this question. When do you think is the right time to begin to venture down that path? And do you think it can happen too early?
The path of just writing a book?
Writing a book, making an online, like, clinic, something, and selling it. Mm-hmm. I know that you and I both had experiences years ago, 8-9 years ago, where we got the opportunity to speak at, clinics or put clinics on over quarterbacks, receivers. But there was physical movement, drill work that came with it, right? It was for the athletes. It wasn't for the professional. We weren't putting on a coach's clinic and selling that. Mm-hmm. So I felt like it's the same, but it's different.
Right.
How do you feel if 5 years ago, do you think that you were anywhere close to being ready to do something like that?
5 years ago, I would have felt like I was in a position to do it. Just like I think you feel right now like you're in a position to be able to do that. I think you always are going to feel that way, honestly. And I think if you're ever able to look back on any piece of work you've done, and whether it's 5, 10, even 1 year from that moment, if you're able to say that you're the exact same and there's no improvements, you're not a very good coach.
Huge red flag.
Massive. Because, and again, everybody says it, but like every year I realize how little I know. And I wrote an article in a magazine, the Texas High School Coaches Association, like in 2014 or something like that, over mechanics. And I look back now and I'm like embarrassed of it.
Right.
Like, God, I'm an idiot. Like, nobody listened to that article ever again. But like at the time, that may have been slightly ahead and it may have helped somebody out. And so I think it also is back onto the person that's reading it and the content, and always taking it with a grain of salt, but doing their own study of it. But, you could always be helping that one coach out that's been in it for a year or two and needs some type of material to study. But do I ever think that you're ready? I think the answer is no and yes at the same time, because I think you'll realize looking back that you're, probably never ready for it. But you put out content that you felt was right at the time, and good for you. It helped people out. But if you feel that, looking back and know I had it all right and and nothing needs to change, there's a problem with you and
That
your
kind of-
self-growth.
That kind of falls back onto what we talked about last week of like, well, this is the way I've always done it.
No doubt.
And that's the scary. I think that what you said at the beginning, I think that's the biggest value in doing something like that. If the sole purpose of producing that content is like, oh, I gotta diversify, like I'm gonna sell this, and like so many people are gonna buy it. And I think that I know I have. I think we've both caught ourselves in that situation, whether it be camps, clinics, speaking, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest, the most valuable aspect of that practice, of that activity, of that task is like, you better be detail oriented or you're going to get exposed.
No doubt.
And just like how you said kids can see who you really are. If you talk in bullet points, coaches can see that. If you produce content in bullet points and there's not a deep dive into specifics, you're going to get exposed. People are going to ask you questions and you're not going to know how to answer them. And, we've said it before, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. But if this way is the way you're producing content about, you better be able to defend it. You better be able to walk us through every detail, every aspect of that process. Because if you can't, you're not going to get labeled as a fraud, but it's not a lot of people are going to buy what you're selling, literally and figuratively, now and in the present. But I think that it's a great practice for younger coaches, even if you don't end up putting it on CoachTube. Type it out, produce it, record it, whatever. Give it to somebody you trust. Poke holes in this, right?
Yeah. You
have like the red team or whatever. That's what like journalists call it. Like, be the devil's advocate, find the problems in here. And that, then you're just back to the whole iron sharpens iron. But if you choose to produce it, put it on CoachTube, be willing, open, and able to hear that feedback. Don't immediately just, I made this, I know what I'm talking about. You don't.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue. Because like a good example would be like, as an offensive coordinator, everybody's always ready. The ones who have not been an OC, they're always ready for it, right? Everybody they've coached under, whatever, trash, I know more. And then the moment becomes when they have to be the OC. And then all of a sudden they actually have to physically do the work. And some of them already have done stuff. But what's interesting is every single time people will start diving into it, putting my work down. And as they get deeper and deeper, they realize how little they actually have. The blueprint is not even close to having even an outline. Like, they have nothing. They just had, a couple things here, a couple things there. But they don't have a lot of structure. And so, to your point, diving into it and forcing yourself to kind of ask the question, why? Because I have a thing with quarterbacks to where I'll ask them, why? And normally, if you can ask somebody why twice about the same thing, you'll stump them. Because they'll have the answer first off. Why do you do this? Because of this. And it might sound good. Okay, well, why do you do that? And once you get to that third layer, people normally struggle. And it always comes back to, well, that's just what I was taught. Or that's just what I've always done. And can feel like a terrible moment, but if you can accept that, you just won.
100%.
Yeah.
That was, Coach Babers used to be big about that. It's like, I'll never forget him sitting in the room, Terrence Williams, Lanier Sims, Josh Gordon, pick a name. And he'd pause tape, whether it was team, like regular team blitz, one-on-ones, whatever, hey, everybody watch Terrence right here. I'm okay with what you did, long as you can tell me why you did it.
Yep.
In the first 2 years, it was a lot of like, I was just playing.
Yeah.
And then, as we got better, the answers got better. Well, he did this, and I know that Kendall's doing this, so that means it's going to create a faster void. So if I just slip the release and I can push and lean on this smaller corner, it's going to open a bigger, seam throw, yada, yada. It was never like there's only one way to respond to situations. It was, here's your tool belt, which is a phrase I use way too often, right? Here's your tool belt.
No, that's great.
Take out the tool you see best fit for the situation, apply it. But if I think it's unorthodox or different from what I would do, just make sure you can tell me why you chose that path. And if you can confidently and accurately walk me through what you did and what led you to that decision, I totally support it.
Yep.
But if we just got lucky with our athleticism, we're going to talk through a plan, so we better approach that, and we don't just rely on our athleticism.
Yes.
And obviously, that's a completely different conversation from a player, but from a coach's standpoint, I think that you can do the same thing peer to peer, right? Okay, when you were in this situation, why'd you call that?
Right.
And I think that's cross-platform. It doesn't matter what sport you play or coach.
Yes.
Hey, in this situation, we've only got a 1-run lead, guy in scoring position. Why did you throw that pitch? Well, because X, Y, and Z. But if your answer is like, it's my favorite pitch, well,
yeah,
you got lucky and I'm mad at you.
Yeah.
So I think it's just how, I know I asked you the question. I'm going to give my answer. Sorry. But I feel like we're saying a lot of the same things of how you approach that task or how you approach that goal. If it's a means to a monetary ends, you're never ready, and the timing's not going to be right. But if you're using it as a chance to grow and learn about yourself and from your peers, I think you should produce what you can within reason and to scale as early and often as you can.
Absolutely, I agree. All right, let's transition to spring ball now. Obviously, as we're getting into it, we're getting closer. Now it's pre-spring ball, prepping for it. For those who actually do it, how do you look at spring ball? Do you look at it? Do you use spring ball to find your identity for the fall, or do you try to find your identity now and rep that all spring so you're even better for the fall, or both?
I think that nobody's going to like this answer, but I think it's a variation, and it's team to team, it's year to year, it's situation to situation. And I can say that with confidence because I've approached it inaccurately and had to deal with that adjustment period as we got into the season. And then I've dealt with it what I felt was pretty accurately and seen how it accelerated early success in the season and growth in situations off of that. And I think I'm going to have a successful approach. Everybody does, right? We're going to have an undefeated spring. I think I have a successful roadmap for how to approach this spring, and it's totally different than last spring, right? So, 2020 came in super confident, guns blazing. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. Everybody gets it. We're going to be great. This kid's going to be able to fit this role, and, we can expect this from him. And then you get to the season and you're like, wow, I could not have been more wrong. And you're making adjustments on the fly, and the growing pains suck, and you get them over with. You take your medicine, and we got hot late, and that rolled over into the 2021 spring, which was a clear and obvious definition of personality. This is who we are. And based off of that, we're going to do this all spring. We're going to focus on these things. And to see it manifest into, I don't want to say exactly, but it was pretty dang close.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
You didn't write a perfect script, but you wrote one that when you reflect back 8 months later, you're like, okay, not bad.
Called it.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we knew who we were coming back, which allowed us to sharpen and hone those specific set of skills and add wrinkles as we felt necessary. In this offseason, I have a better idea. So I've had 2 off seasons of high confidence. One that was way off base. And the second one that was pretty accurate, just of knowing who we were and what we were going to be great at. In this offseason, we lose quite a bit personnel-wise, and I think we're going to go through an identity shift. I wouldn't say that we're going to lose it, right? But it's going to change a little, which is expected. That's how high school football works, unless you coach at Southlake or Westlake. And dealing with that means that our approach to spring is going to be a little bit different. And that's okay, because I feel confident knowing or having that expectation now that we'll build a great roadmap for how to approach the next 7 months to put ourselves in as equally good of situation as we were this past August. So the answer to this or that would be yes.
Gotcha. Situations are situational.
Right, exactly.
Gotcha.
Let's turn it into a haiku.
Interesting. And so how many spring balls have you had now total? Has it been
It's technically been 2, but it's really been 1 because one of them was COVID, right? So it was like a virtual spring ball.
Gotcha.
And I was like, man, everybody knows like offense is gonna be simple. Everybody knows like what they're gonna do. They're gonna play with such speed and confidence because we're gonna keep it simple. Yada yada yada. This guy's gonna fill this role. This guy's gonna fill this role. We're gonna be able to lean on this. And then you're like, oh, okay. I mean, for starters, easy one. Our All-State MVP center played the first 4 games of tackle that in that 2020 year. And it's like, wow, that, hindsight.
Yeah.
We thought that he could be good enough there and we could just put somebody at center when in reality it didn't fit his comfort level and we just weren't in a situation where that gave us the best 5.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's, one of, not to point one specific, that was a lot of things that we did and you learn from and you figure out throughout the year and then boom, you're good. You roll into December. But that was all done virtually, right?
Right.
Until you get into July is when we were allowed to start doing like real workouts, basically.
Yeah, totally different.
And then you come back last offseason, spring ball 2021, quarterback back, leading receiver back, leading rusher back, 4 offensive linemen back, right? It's like, okay, this is what was good when we were good.
Right.
So it's going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll just continue to hone and get better at those things and work on sharpening the small details of that so we can do our bread and butter against any and every look somebody throws at us.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, we were able to. We're not in that situation this year.
Right.
So.
Yeah. It's a hard balance because I think regardless of anybody's situation, the balance always comes, the dilemma always comes down to experimenting in the spring, right? To try to figure out, just to make sure that you don't get to the fall and week 5, you figure out, man, we're actually really good at gap schemes and we didn't do much of that at all. Now we're just figuring it out. Better late than never, but dang it, what if? But then you also don't want to do so much where you kind of just diluted everything in the spring and you didn't get great at anything at all. But then if you have a very experienced team, you can keep it simple and be great. But it's also very easy with a very experienced team to do too much and get too tricky, right? So it's a tough balance, but I think it's one of those things to where, again, situations are situational, and being able to manage those things and try to combine those two, like you said, I think that's the biggest key every single year.
And I think that it's a double-edged sword from the small school, big school conversation of spring ball, like spring ball and then spring ball.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're doing these things against trash cans and air.
Yeah.
Stepping into spots and you'll be here and you'll communicate this. And then there's big schools that are strapping up and having 15 to 18 practices and being able to take that, put it into simulated live action and say, okay, we thought we'd be good at that. And here we're not. But then you have to peel back that layer of saying, okay, are we not good at that because we're going against our defense who either knows our calls or we have a phenomenal front?
No, because every freaking defense does that.
Yeah.
It pisses me off.
I mean,
sorry.
Phil Bennett's openly admitted, like, yeah, obviously, my guys are going to be able to hear stuff and they're not just going to forget it. I had worst spring ball experience of my life was solely predicated off of that. To a slightly different degree, Romy Blaylock, a.k.a. Romy Island, out there who played 2 years of receiver, and then they were like, you're an athlete. We got to find a way to get you on the field. Why don't you go play corner? And we call a play, and it's like a quick option play for the receiver. And, spring ball, one guy's banged up, and then Lanier Sampson runs down the field for a deep ball and gets tired. So I'm in with the ones. Just like that. Okay. 10's at quarterback, it's like, all right. They call the play. I think they forgot that it was me out there and they didn't go the other way, which I was like, whatever, I can do this. But knowing that Romy's out playing corner and he knows the play. So I tried to set him up, and it was supposed to be a stop with an option to delay slant. So I stop and head fake. He knows the play, and as soon as he sees me flinch after the stop, he jumps the slant. Well, Griff threw it. Romy dives, picks it up. He trapped it on the ground, but the defense was like, "Oh, it was a pick." And he was like, "Once you start, you can't stop." I'm like, "Okay."
Well, what are we doing?
I mean, I know that, you know that, but like, so does he. So what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
But they're all going crazy, like trying to get on my head, and I was just like, I hate everybody here. It's the worst day of my life.
Yeah. I mean, I'll literally go on the other like sideline in spring ball sometimes, like nonchalantly during 7-on-7 or whatever, just to make a point, like especially like day 1 or 2 when the defense is super basic, because I'll like naturally get 2 or 3 DBs that are staring at me.
Yeah.
I don't really. I'm the only coach over here. Your defensive coach on the other sideline. Why are you looking at me?
Yeah.
Oh no, coach, I wouldn't do anything. No, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Especially that guy in spring ball that like he's the starting corner, but like, hey, we got to give everybody on the 2 deep. So he's like the third X.
Yeah.
So he's like been in the meetings, and you're like, stop. Okay.
Yeah.
The only reason you go to those meetings is so you can jump routes in 7-on-7. That's why I stand behind him.
Yeah.
I stand behind everybody.
Yep.
They're like, Coach, you won't be there. I'm like, yeah, you know what? You won't be standing 4 steps behind this free safety either,
right.
taking away the post route.
That's
but
exactly right.
there you are.
Yep.
So shut up and quit peeking at my signals.
Yep. Let me run something by you real quick. Tell me what your thoughts are. Maybe you'll hate it. So that's just kind of who you are sometimes. But,
okay.
Challenge this spring to the coaches offensively was to go through our depth chart and obviously look at the physical bodies, the way and obviously the way they play, but length, everything, and then try to gauge the backup and get that backup to be very, very, very similar to the same length, play. And this is something I haven't done before. I'm sure other coaches probably have. They're like, "You're an idiot talking about this. This is not revolutionary." All right, I'm an idiot. Okay,
I've been doing this
I'm
since
slow at
'87.
things. Yeah, right. But trying to get all of that as similar as possible. And I told them basically on a scale. So if your starter is a 5 on a scale of 1 to 5, right? He is a 5. He's incredible. And the backup is anything that is less than 3, right? Let's just say a 3. So not that good. And there's another guy that could be a 4 as his backup, but different body. That might be the exception. But the whole point of it is just getting that backup to be the same type of body. Why? Obviously, again, bias as a quarterback, throwing to receivers, I don't want that playbook to change. And I think it makes a really big difference from stride length, yards, especially talking about outside guys. Because like this past year, our slot was like 6'2". Backup, literally 5'6". That's a massive difference. But from a
100%.
playbook, the 6'2" guy, I really didn't want to run a whip route with.
Right.
But with the backup, absolutely. But that can start to become a different game plan now.
100%.
And again,
you don't even have to go that far though. But you go to your tackles, right?
Well, yes.
He takes a 3 and a hitch with a 6'5" left tackle. And then that kid rolls his ankle, and 5'11" Tommy comes in.
Yes.
Right, and that hitch better have a little giddy up in it because that pocket's not as deep.
Well, no. So you stole the words out of my mouth, because that was really the main point I want to talk about. Was like with the offensive lineman, if you end up having a left tackle that is basically 6'4", and he is just a thick, athletic freak, and he's fast, and then the backup is a bowling ball with legs. To your point, especially you're playing like an odd front, and they always want to crash B gap. Like that's going to be an extremely different looking pocket.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, I think that's a great approach, and it's a great idea for a program that has that kind of depth.
Well, but that's why I also gave them the abilities. Okay, hey, if the other backup is that much better than the similar guy,
Allen High School,
no doubt, put the other guy in there. I get
Allen
it.
High School better be doing that.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah.
Salina High School better be playing the next best right guard.
For sure. Yeah.
So I think it's It's going to be the name of this episode. I think situations are situational. I think if you have the ability, if you're blessed with the depth and the talent to do that, you better be doing that. I mean, you better approach it that way because every other level of the game is being approached that way. That's how college coaches recruit now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, our starter, we're expecting you to have an opportunity to play, and the guy that's been playing is 6'6", 310. So we're looking for a 6'5", 6'6", 300, 310-ish guy that can fit that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're like us, which, you know, we got a team of 48 kids on our varsity and 31 of them are seniors, we're not afforded that luxury. So we better not invest a bunch of time into it. We better just evaluate what we have and build accordingly.
Well, and so that's where, like, you know, if I was on y'all's staff, that's where I would end up challenging and say, okay, hey, I know that we don't have those numbers. So let's do the mental gymnastics and find out which domino effect would be the worst for us. Because for my staff, I said, basically, if that guy is a 2, right, the backup, he ain't that great. But you think you can coach him to a 3 or a 4. Does that make us better week 3 to be able to play him and to not have the domino effect to where got to move this guy here and that guy there?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that's the other
100%.
thing. Or is it, man, you know what? I can't coach him there. Well, you're probably fired. Kidding. But, you know, can't coach him there. Okay, crap. So then, but is it too early now, pre-spring ball, to already start saying, well, we would probably do this and do that, and it is necessary, I get it, but I think if you can think about that as an OC early on and get that figured out, you might be able to save yourself some lack of production or scrambling in the fall.
Or as I like to call them, mid-season growing pains.
Absolutely.